The hardest part is not always what happens to you. Sometimes it is what you become while trying to survive it. You answer the message before you have even finished feeling it. You smooth over the tension before anyone else has to sit in it. You notice the mood in the room before you notice your own breath. And somewhere along the way, being the strong one stops feeling like a gift and starts feeling like a job you never applied for. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not look dramatic from the outside. You still function, you still show up, you still smile at the right moments, but inside, something has gone dry. You can feel it in the jaw that never fully unclenches, in the shoulders that never really drop, in the way your body braces before the phone even rings. It is as if your nervous system has learned one rule: stay ready, stay useful, stay composed, stay strong. And maybe that is exactly how people learn to love you. Not for your softness, not for your need, not for your vulnerability, for your capacity to carry what others could not hold. But this is where the story gets deeper, because always being the strong one is not just a personality trait. In Jungian language, it can become a persona, a mask, a social identity built to survive a world that rewarded your endurance and ignored your pain. The persona is not fake in a simple way. It is often born from necessity. It says, "This is the version of me that keeps me safe. This is the version that gets approval. This is the version that does not burden anyone." The problem is that what protects you for a while can imprison you later. You begin by being strong because you have to. Then you keep being strong because people expect it. Then you keep being strong because you no longer know how to stop. And when you finally try to put the weight down, something strange happens. You feel guilty. You feel weak. You feel selfish. You feel exposed. The room feels too quiet. Your own needs feel almost embarrassing. You may even hear an old inner voice telling you that if you are not the one who holds everything together, then everything will fall apart. That voice is not wisdom. It is a complex. And complexes, as Carl Jung understood them, are not just ideas. They are emotional knots. They are old patterns of feeling and reaction that take over when something in the present touches a wound from the past. So when your body panics at the thought of not being the strong one, it is not only reacting to today, it is reacting to everything that taught you that your value depended on your usefulness. Maybe you were the child who noticed too much, the one who kept the peace, the one who read the room before entering it, the one who learned that emotional stability was not something you received, but something you provided for everyone else. Maybe your strength was praised so often that your distress became invisible. Maybe your tears were inconvenient. Maybe your anger was too much. Maybe your needs were answered only when they became impossible to ignore. So you adapted. You built a self that could handle pressure, a self that could be counted on, a self that could absorb the chaos without breaking. And yes, there is dignity in that. There is real dignity in survival, real dignity in resilience, real dignity in the person who keeps going when life is heavy. But there is another truth hidden inside that dignity. If you are always the strong one, you may never discover who you are when you are not performing strength. That is a frightening sentence, because it touches the place where your identity and your wound have become almost the same thing. Maybe you have noticed that people are comfortable leaning on you, but not always comfortable seeing you. They come to you for advice, for calm, for perspective, for emotional labor, for forgiveness, for understanding. They tell you that you are amazing, grounded, strong, mature. And some part of you lights up when you hear it, because being seen feels good, even if it is only the useful parts of you that are being seen. But then you go home, or close the door, or sit alone at night, and the praise feels hollow. Because no one asked how heavy it was, no one asked what it cost, no one asked whether the strong one was tired of being strong. This is where the shadow begins to speak. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is not simply the dark or bad part of you. It is everything you have pushed out of your conscious identity because it did not fit the role you had to play. If you became the strong one, then your neediness may have gone into the shadow. Your anger may have gone there. Your resentment, your exhaustion, your longing to be held, your wish to stop being reliable for one moment and let someone else notice you without having to earn it. The shadow is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to return what you abandoned. And that is why the strong one often feels a quiet pressure building inside, a strange irritability, a deep fatigue, a sense of being emotionally crowded. You may not have a dramatic breakdown. You may simply start feeling less alive, less present, less patient, less willing to keep carrying everyone's feelings as if they were your responsibility. People around you may not understand the shift. They may say you have changed. They may say you are colder. They may say you are not as available as before. And perhaps the most painful thing is that they often mean it as criticism, when in fact your body is finally asking for relief. This is where many strong people get trapped. They mistake their exhaustion for failure. They think their inability to keep over-functioning means they are becoming selfish, difficult, or broken. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if your fatigue is not proof that you are failing at strength, but proof that strength without rest has become self-erasure? There is a difference between resilience and self-abandonment. A person can be resilient and still have boundaries. A person can be capable and still say no. A person can be emotionally mature and still refuse to be everyone's container. But if your identity was built around being the one who never needs too much, then boundaries can feel like betrayal. Rest can feel like danger. Asking for help can feel like humiliation. And this is where the ego becomes involved. The ego, in Jung's framework, is the center of conscious identity. It is the I that says, "This is who I am." But the ego is not the whole self. It can become rigid. It can cling to an image. It can defend a role long after that role has stopped serving life. The strong one is often an ego structure built around competence, control, and emotional containment. It says, if I stay composed, I stay safe. If I stay useful, I stay valued. If I stay strong, I stay needed. But being needed is not the same as being loved. And that distinction can change everything. Because if your sense of worth depends on being the one who holds others together, then you may unconsciously choose relationships, friendships, and roles that keep you in that position. You may attract people who take more than they give, not always because they are cruel, sometimes because your strength invites them to stop developing their own. Your calm becomes their excuse. Your competence becomes their dependency. Your patience becomes the structure that allows their chaos to continue. This can happen in families, in friendships, in love, at work. The pattern is the same. You become the emotional floor everyone stands on, and no one asks whether the floor is cracking. The deeper truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes the strong one is not just a victim of others' needs. Sometimes the strong one has become attached to being indispensable. That attachment is not vanity. It is often fear. Because if you stop being indispensable, what remains? That question can feel like falling. And yet, falling is sometimes the beginning of individuation. Individuation is one of Jung's most important ideas. It is the process of becoming more fully yourself, not by becoming perfect, but by becoming whole. And wholeness does not happen when only the strong parts are allowed to live. Wholeness happens when the parts you exiled are welcomed back into consciousness. The tired part, the angry part, the grieving part, the part that wants care, the part that is done proving, the part that is no longer willing to confuse endurance with identity. Maybe you have spent years being the one who does not collapse, but the psyche does not ask for performance forever. At some point, it asks for truth, and truth can arrive as discomfort. You may notice that the things that used to satisfy you no longer do. The role feels thinner. The praise feels less nourishing. The constant giving feels heavier. The silent expectation that you will handle everything begins to feel insulting. Not because you have become less kind, but because yourself is beginning to resist being reduced to a function. Carl Jung would not have described this as weakness. He would have recognized it as compensation from the unconscious. When the conscious personality becomes too one-sided, life pushes back. The unconscious does not care about your image. It cares about balance. It cares about the parts of you that have been silenced. It will often bring them to the surface through fatigue, irritation, dreams, emotional dryness, or a sudden inability to keep pretending. Sometimes the first sign that the strong one is changing is not a dramatic rebellion. It is a quiet refusal. You answer later. You explain less. You stop volunteering for emotional labor that was never yours. You feel a little guilty, and then a little relieved. You sit in a room and realize you do not want to perform your usual role tonight. That moment matters more than it seems, because the persona hates uncertainty. It wants clear rules. It wants the old script. But the self, the deeper organizing center of the psyche, is not interested in keeping you trapped in a role that no longer allows life to move through you. The self wants wholeness, and wholeness often begins when the mask starts to crack, not in a humiliating way, in a liberating way. There is a symbol that fits this perfectly: a cracked mirror. A cracked mirror does not stop reflecting. It reflects differently. It shows that the image was never the whole truth. If your life has been a mirror in which everyone else saw the strong one, the capable one, the steady one, then the crack may be the first sign that another image is trying to emerge. Not the broken version of you, the real one, the one beneath the performance, the one who does not need to be endlessly useful in order to deserve tenderness. This is where many people misunderstand the pattern. They think the answer is to become less caring, but that is not the answer. The answer is to stop confusing care with self-erasure. You can still be generous. You can still be wise. You can still be steady. But now those qualities must come from center, not from compulsion, from choice, not from fear, from wholeness, not from a wound that says, if I am not useful, I will be left. That wound is often older than you think. Maybe it began in a home where emotions were unpredictable. Maybe you learned that being easy made life smoother. Maybe you learned that your sadness burdened others. Maybe you learned that your strength earned you peace, while your vulnerability earned you silence. These experiences do not disappear just because you grow up. They become part of the emotional architecture of the adult self, and unless they are seen, they keep organizing your relationships from the background. This is why the strong one can feel so lonely. Not because no one is around, because no one is meeting the part of you that never got to exist. You may be surrounded by people who admire your resilience and still feel unseen. You may be praised for being the rock and still ache for a hand that asks, gently, whether the rock is tired. You may be the one everyone trusts and still feel like no one knows the cost of that trust. And when that loneliness becomes too loud, the shadow often tries to get your attention through resentment. Resentment is not always ugly. Sometimes it is information. It says, this arrangement is no longer fair. It says, I have been overextending. It says, my yes has become automatic. It says, I am tired of being the one who adapts. If you listen carefully, resentment can be the first honest voice after years of polished strength. It is not there to make you bitter. It is there to show you where your life has been draining through invisible holes. The strong one often fears resentment because it feels ungrateful. But gratitude and self-betrayal are not the same thing. You can be grateful for your resilience and still refuse to keep using it as a cage. You can love people and still stop carrying what belongs to them. You can be compassionate and still draw a line. And yes, the line may feel strange at first. The first time you do not rescue, it may feel like cruelty. The first time you do not explain, it may feel like guilt. The first time you do not rush to smooth everything over, it may feel like the world will punish you. But often, what actually happens is this. The people who depended on your over-functioning will react to the loss of your old role. They may push back. They may become confused. They may even accuse you of changing. Let them be confused. Confusion is sometimes what happens when an old system loses its favorite support beam. This does not mean you have to become cold. Coldness is not the goal. In fact, many strong people fear that if they stop over-giving, they will become hard. But boundaries are not hardness. Boundaries are clarity. They are the shape of your dignity. They say, this is where I end and you begin. This is what I can give. This is what I will no longer carry. This is what belongs to you. A boundary is not a wall that kills love. It is a door with a lock. A door can open. A door can close. A door gives shape to relationship. Without a door, everything spills everywhere. The strong one often learns this late, because when you have been praised for being endlessly available, no can feel almost violent. But no is not violence when it protects your life. No is not rejection when it preserves your center. No is not selfish when it interrupts a pattern that has been slowly draining your soul. And the soul notices. The soul notices when you are tired of being the emotional adult in every room. The soul notices when you laugh too quickly to avoid burdening anyone. The soul notices when you accept less than you need, because you are used to being grateful for scraps of reciprocity. The soul notices when your body says no, long before your mouth does. That body wisdom matters, because the body often knows the truth before the mind admits it. The tight chest, the shallow breath, the stomach drop when the phone lights up, the sudden heaviness after saying yes too quickly, the relief that comes after canceling something you did not want to attend. These are not random sensations. They are signals. The psyche speaks through the body when words have been trained into silence. If this names something you have never been able to say out loud, write a single sentence for yourself somewhere private. I am allowed to stop carrying what is not mine. You do not have to post it. You do not have to announce it. Just let it exist, because the first revolution is often private. And it begins with noticing how much of your life has been organized around preventing discomfort for everyone else. That is the hidden shadow behind always being the strong one. You may have become so skilled at managing the outside world that you lost contact with your own inner weather. You know how to read other people's storms. You may not know how to sit with your own sadness without trying to fix it. You may know how to calm everyone else down, but not how to let yourself fall apart safely. You may know how to be the answer for others, but not how to ask the question that matters most. What do I actually need? That question can feel dangerous because it leads to grief. And grief is often what lies under the strong one's armor. Grief for the years spent performing stability. Grief for the tenderness you postponed. Grief for the version of you that had to grow up too soon. Grief for all the times you were admired for what you could endure instead of loved for how you felt. Grief for the moments when you needed someone and became the someone instead. There is no need to rush past that grief. It is not weakness. It is the return of feeling where feeling was once sacrificed for survival. And when feeling returns, the ego may panic. It may want to tighten back into control. It may say, enough. Let's be strong again. Let's not go there. Let's not need too much. Let's not become a burden. But the self is wiser than the ego's fear. The self knows that a life built only on strength becomes spiritually flat. It can look impressive and still feel empty. It can look competent and still be disconnected from the deeper pulse of aliveness. The strong one may have everything working on the surface and still quietly wonder why joy feels distant, why rest feels impossible, why intimacy feels complicated, why being seen feels unsafe. Because being seen is different from being useful. And many strong people have never learned the difference. To be seen is to be known in your limitation as well as your capability. To be seen is to be loved when you are not performing. To be seen is to let another person witness the moment when you do not have the answer. That kind of visibility can feel terrifying if your whole identity was built around being the one who never wavers. But it is also where real connection begins. Not the connection that depends on your usefulness, the connection that can survive your humanity. This is where the shadow becomes a teacher. It shows you where your yes has been automatic. It shows you where your care has been compulsive. It shows you where your strength has been hiding fear. It shows you where you have been loyal to a role that no longer fits the life you are trying to live. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That does not mean the change is instant. It means the unconscious has begun to lose its power over you. The pattern is no longer invisible. The persona is no longer the whole story. The strong one is no longer the only available self. Something softer, truer, and more sovereign begins to emerge. Maybe it looks like slower replies. Maybe it looks like fewer explanations. Maybe it looks like asking for help before you are already empty. Maybe it looks like leaving a conversation before you become the therapist, the referee, or the emotional shock absorber. Maybe it looks like sitting in silence and realizing that silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space for your own voice to return. That voice may be quiet at first. It may not sound heroic. It may simply say, "I am tired," or "I do not want to do this anymore," or "I need more than this," or "I deserve to be cared for too." Listen to it. It is not making you weak. It is making you whole. The strong one is often the one who has forgotten that receiving is also a skill. Letting others support you is not a failure of character. It is part of being human. The psyche cannot remain balanced when one side is permanently overdeveloped. If you have spent years giving, you must learn the art of receiving without shame. If you have spent years holding, you must learn how to be held. If you have spent years being the answer, you must learn how to live inside a question long enough for a new self to appear. That new self will not be built from performance. It will be built from truth. And truth, in the beginning, can feel awkward. You may not know how to be less available without feeling guilty. You may not know how to let someone else handle their own emotions without feeling responsible. You may not know how to rest without earning it. You may not know how to say, "I cannot carry this today," without hearing an old voice call you selfish. But every time you choose honesty over automatic strength, the old complex loses a little of its grip. Every time you notice your body tightening and choose to pause, you are practicing individuation. Every time you stop rescuing what was never yours to fix, you are reclaiming the self. Every time you let someone be disappointed without rushing to repair their feeling, you are stepping out of the old persona and into a more mature life. And maturity is not the same as hardness. Maturity is the ability to tell the truth without abandoning compassion. It is the ability to care without collapsing. It is the ability to remain open without becoming available for exploitation. It is the ability to be strong without making strength your prison. The old version of you may still appear when pressure rises. That is normal. Complexes do not vanish because we understand them once. They return in moments of stress, old settings, old relationships, old family dynamics, old fears. But now you can recognize them. Now you can say, "This is the old role trying to take over. This is the part of me that thinks love must be earned through endurance. This is the part of me that confuses self-sacrifice with worth." And recognition changes the relationship. What was once fate becomes pattern. What was once identity becomes behavior. What was once invisible becomes workable. That is the beginning of freedom. Not the fantasy of never being strong again. Not the performance of being endlessly soft. Not the promise that life will suddenly become easy. Freedom is smaller and more powerful than that. Freedom is the moment you can feel the old pressure and still choose differently. Freedom is the moment you can say, "I will not betray myself to keep this image alive." And that sentence, quietly held, can alter the whole direction of a life. Because the strong one was never meant to carry everyone forever. The strong one was meant to survive, yes, but also to evolve, to stop living only from the role that once saved them, to let the shadow speak, to let the body rest, to let the self lead. To discover that dignity does not come from how much you can endure, but from how honestly you can live. There is a particular kind of peace that arrives when you stop trying to be invulnerable. Not a loud peace, a clean one, a room after the storm, a glass of water set down carefully, a phone that stays dark for a while and no longer feels like a verdict, a mirror that no longer demands the same old face. Maybe that is the image to keep with you tonight. Not the strong one carrying the world, the strong one finally placing the world back where it belongs. If your life has been built around being the one who never falls apart, then the next chapter may begin with something quieter than collapse and more powerful than control. It may begin with a simple act of self-recognition, You are tired. You are human. You are allowed to need. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be more than what you can hold for everyone else. My kindness no longer requires self-betrayal. Let that be the line that stays with you. And when the old reflex returns, when the mask tries to tighten, when the room expects the familiar version of you, remember the cracked mirror. You do not need to become someone else. You only need to stop disappearing behind the role that kept you safe for too long. The strong one does not have to die. She only has to come home. And when she does, the silence is different. It is no longer the silence of holding everything together alone. It is the silence of finally being with yourself.